Hey guys, it's Big Nate here. This is my review of Star Wars the Acolyte, Episode 3. Let's get it done. We open up on a flashback episode. So, if we're having this flashback episode and they knew we were going to have this flashback episode, why would they have Yord in episode 1 spend almost 3 whole minutes describing OSHA's backstory if we were going to get this episode? It makes no sense. Okay. We are on the planet of Brandok, 16 years prior to the events of episode 1 and 2. We are underneath a yellow tree and we find a very young OSHA. She is using the Force, casually inconveniencing a small bird-like creature before letting it fly away, only for her twin sister May to catch the bird and torture it a little like most insane psychopaths do before releasing it. Apparently, soon enough, the two girls are going to be going through a special ceremony that'll mark them out as witches. Something that OSHA herself is not very happy about and is not looking forward to. And as the two start to talk about it, they're interrupted by a female Zabrak. Now, I'm not sure if she's a Dathomirian Zabrak or if she's just a Zabrak. I'm just going to say Zabrak, who is apparently one of their mothers, or at least has the title of mother. And as she leads them away, we see a very young, yet still exactly the same age Sol spying on them as they leave. They enter a large construct. It looks like the Hoover Dam put on top of a mountain for no reason. Now, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, this is be a cool shot to do XYZ, but you have to remember that things aren't just placed there for the sake of placing there. Castles aren't placed where they are just because the scenery is good. They're there for a strategic purpose. Towns are built where they are because of an economic purpose. Why would you build this gigantic Hoover Dam looking construction on top of a mountain where there is no water and it would be very difficult to even construct something here in the first place? Just makes no sense. And as they come into this construct, we see a large society of all women. I'm just assuming they've genocided all the men. And apparently, several of the women are called mothers, so this has to be a title, not an actual, not an actual designation of any genetic familiarity. Apparently, this is a very large coven of witches. And we meet the mother of the two girls, whose name escapes me and I don't really care, and they have a disagreement on the parenting style. The Zabrak wanting more discipline, and the human mother wanting much more freedom. And apparently, in some way, the twins aren't normal, as the two women discuss how unnatural they are. And we get a little class lesson here in front of the witches, as the mother goes on to explain that the Force isn't the Force, it's actually a thread. It is not an all-encompassing field that penetrates the galaxy and binds all creatures together as one under the living force. It is a singular thread, a tendril that people can pull on, but you cannot use it as a weapon or some such. And then she proceeds to use it as a weapon by force pushing a woman away and saying, that is the power of one. Cool. And then another woman who looks like a twin of this one comes up and she pushes both of them away again, but it takes a little bit more effort. She goes, the power of two. And I'm having weird flashbacks to Charmed watching with my sisters. It's bloody weird. And then she goes on this diatribe of how the Jedi are wrong in their belief of the Force. And I can get behind some of this because you have a lot of religious factions in the world that disagree about the names of the deities or even what their commandments are. I can get behind some of that. But it feels like there's a purposeful attack here going against the Jedi every time, and it's a little bit annoying. And I'm also a bit like, of course, many more people doing the same thing is going to be more powerful than one person doing something. If you're a single person, you cannot lift a car. If there are multiple people, yes, you can lift a car. I don't understand why this would be any different in the Force. And as the mother turns her powers onto her daughters and to stop them from fighting each other, she blasts them off their feet and they barely miss hitting the stone staircase behind them. This is not a very safe place to be playing around with the Force. We get some more exposition on the thread and their views on it, and we get a little bit of toxic parenting here from the mother. She is a little bit aggressive here, not going to lie. And apparently the galaxy doesn't like witches. Let's be perfectly honest here. The majority of the witches that are known in the galaxy are the Night Sisters, and they are slave-owning psychopaths that bend and twist reality to their own whim because they can. And these women are absolutely doing the same thing. The mother calls her daughters special before we skip forward to nighttime and the beginning of their ritual ceremony. The witches start their ceremony by writhing and bumping off each other and madly cackling and appearing to lose themselves in their own little Force bubbles here, or whatever the witches call it, as they be going into a trance. Apparently, they haven't done this ceremony since their exile, and the whole thing is centered around the twins. May and Osha move through the crowd as they're brought forward to their mother as she begins to do a random arm movements, and the moon becomes to eclipse and a light comes down into her hands, and she cups the light like a Kamehameha wave and pushes it into May's face. She gets a face full of this silver dust, and she gets a spiral mark like the mother has in the middle of her forehead, just off and to the side. But before Osha can get hers done, the ceremony is interrupted by a squad of Jedi, and the Wookiee looks ridiculous. It's like he's just a regular guy with a Wookiee head on. It's awful. And thank the Force for the Jedi here interrupting this ceremony. They've apparently come for the children, a bit creepy if you ask me, and the twins are apparently Force virginses like Anakin. Apparently, according to what this mother has done, that she and the Zabrak created the twins. Now, it's been a while since I've done basic biology, but I'm pretty sure it takes two to tango. It takes a sperm and an egg. If you're just using the egg, you end up with a thing like Dolly the sheep, which is just a clone. So what we have here are May and Osha, more than likely just a clone of their human mother that mutated and had twins instead of being a singular clone. Because without the other half of the DNA, it's not a new individual being. It's just a clone. And you can see they haven't got any of the head horns or spikes. Haven't got any of the spikes that are consistent with being part Zabrak. So obviously they're full human, which means they're just Force clones. And given that they have midichlorians and the Force, it means that these witches have stumbled on a means of doing something that Darth Plagueis the Wise and Darth Sidious both failed to do, with unlimited resources and millennia upon millennia of dark side tomes, techniques, and crafts, including Sith alchemy and Sith magics. So these Sith witches have done something that the Sith mainline haven't been able to do ever. Wow. Their deep resonancing with the dark side here must be what helped them get along with it. The Jedi here force the witch's hand as if they would have attacked the Jedi would have slaughtered them with their superior martial skills. And had they refused, the Jedi would have informed the Republic and more than likely got the children that way. So they are forced to comply or potentially lose the twins altogether. And then we get a cut of that they say they're going to consider it, and they go and have a little council meeting for the witches, the little coven meeting. And they plan to make the kids fail the test because they can't stop them from having the test, but they can instruct them to fail. The instruction here is basically whatever you see in your heart, say the opposite. Both twins agree, though May much more enthusiastically than Osha, because Osha wants to be a Jedi. And during this, we get a little speech from the mother saying it's not about good or evil, it's about power and who's allowed to use it. So not only are we getting some Charmed nonsense in this, but we're getting some Harry Potter nonsense in this as well, as this is almost taken verbatim from Lord Voldemort's speech to Harry during the chapter The Man with Two Faces and the finale of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And Voldemort's the bad guy. The show is supposed to be painting these witches as the good guys, as the Jedi are coming as these oppressors, these evil colonizers, and they're going to ruin our way of life. But they've only proven with their own actions and how this episode's been shot, that these witches are dark side adepts, that they are steeped in the power of the dark side, that they have used the Force unnaturally to force a clone egg to be born, and for that egg to mutate into twins, and that they were willing to murder the Jedi in order to forward their goals. All things that the Sith have been known to do. And now you give them the Voldemort speech, the bad guy speech from Harry Potter. Good Lord. You guys are not doing a good job making these witches seem like the good guys. The Jedi go forward with their tests, and May returns having failed hers, and the Jedi suss out the truth while working with Osha. Saul even begins to talk about the Jedi Temple, and Osha is curious to meet other people. And I want to do a little quick aside here. In the previous meeting with Saul, he handed this child a lightsaber. We don't see him turn the saber off or have such a key to it so it doesn't activate. What if she turned that thing on when she was looking at it? Can you imagine how embarrassing that would have been? He hands this little girl a lightsaber. She looks down the barrel and then flicks the activation switch by accident. That would have been a hell of a thing, wouldn't it? So Osha seems really interested in doing the Jedi path. And given how she was not really enamored with joining up with the witches in the first place, it's understandable. She wants to walk her own path. But May doesn't like it and attacks Osha as they meet back up in the meeting place. They get forcibly separated by their Zabrak mother, and the Mother Superior is supportive, apparently, of this, even though she wasn't supportive before. Now she has a sudden change of heart, which is a little bit weird to me, and allows Osha to choose her own path and choose her own destiny. Osha, not wanting to be a witch, chooses the Jedi. So her mother says that she will consider it at the meeting. Even though she just said, I will support you in this, they're going to have a meeting about it anyway, even though she's the parent and the other should have no input in what the parent thinks is best for their child. Crazy, right? Osha, in her room, begins to pack her stuff, but as she grabs her book to put in her bag, her sister confronts her. And May jumps from, I'm really upset with you, to, I'm going to absolutely murder you in the span of literally under a second. She grabs the book she's holding, takes it out, grabs a wall-mounted lantern, lights the book on fire, and then out of nowhere, it's like this scene is cut, that suddenly fire has completely engulfed the doors, and for some reason is spreading even though the entire building is made out of stone, and stone doesn't burn. Now, I know it's been a while since I've done basic chemistry. But unless there's an accelerant there, this should not be happening. How much oil was in that lantern? And how is it affecting that entire area? That is much more oil than that lantern should have been able to hold, because then it seems to spread into the room as if it's a magic fire. And I swear to God, if it's a magic fire, at least change the color. Is it so hard? I know the budget was so small for this. It's only $120 odd million, and that there's more money being spent on every single episode of this series than was spent on Godzilla minus one. But good lord, you'd think that they would change the color of the fire to indicate that it's not a natural fire. It's like this entire series doesn't know how fire works. It is so weird. May, panicking, manages to pop open an air vent in the room and make her way out, escaping the fire. In the air vents, we hear a small explosion and some screaming that sounds like it's coming from the rest of the coven, but we can't focus on that for now, as May is in the midst of her. As Osha's in the midst of her escape. She comes to the area where the giant computer panel is that we saw earlier in the episode, that was in the same location as the training area, and we get a glimpse of the entire coven lying dead on the floor. Not a single one looks like they've been hit by a lightsaber. It just looks like they're all lying down dead, which is a bit interesting here. Saul runs into the burning building to try and save May and Osha, as he's calling both their names. And May confronts Osha as she gets to the bridge, and this is another one of those classic Star Wars tropes, the bridge conversation. Osha demands to know what May has done. May spits back, "What have you done?" Osha says, "No, what have you done?" And then the bridge collapses. Saul, sprinting now, manages to just save Osha, and May goes down this gigantic chasm. How did she survive that? We don't know. Saul manages to save Osha by pulling her up and out of that giant chasm, not using the force this time. And as he's leading her away from the fire and the slowly exploding building, she passes several of the women of the coven who have all been killed somehow, with no indication of how they have died. We don't see any lightsaber slashes or see any missing limbs. They just all appear to have lied down and died. And she even passes her mother and has a little episode, understandably, at seeing her mother's corpse. And she passes out, leaving Saul to take her back to the Jedi ship. We cut to the Jedi ship as Osha is getting medical aid. Saul, as gently as he can, breaks the news to her that the entire coven has died, and we don't know why. He says, "We're going to go to Coruscant, and if you want to, I will be your Jedi Master, and you will be my Padawan." Something she accepts. And we get no reason here as to why the Jedi should feel guilty. I understand this is Osha's POV, the entire episode, but there's nothing here that indicates anything that the Jedi had done wrong. The witches have done wrong. I mean, there's that whole scene where one of them uses her magic to take full control of the guy, of Master Toman, and probably did some real psychological damage to the poor guy. But there's nothing else that indicates that the Jedi should feel guilty here. So I don't understand what's going on. Maybe it gets explained in future episodes. I don't know. But this episode dragged and dragged and dragged. Whoever does the timing for these episodes needs to be fired, because this is awful. The dialogue is bad. They've done nothing to set these witches up as good people, only as bad guys. And I have also this burning absolute hatred for these witches. I mean, it is ridiculous. They're just dark-sided witches. I don't understand why we would think that these were the good guys at all. They try to paint the Jedi as being colonizers and trying to steal and take away their way of life, but they don't show it properly. They don't show any menace. There's no dialogue indicating it. There's just the Jedi turn up and they make a request that can be denied. None of the writing here indicates that the Jedi should be the bad guys. Everything they've done and everything they've depicted in here shows these witches to be dark side adepts. Everything you remember from the lore, everything you remember from the EU and the new lore involving Palpatine and cloning is showing you that these women are the bad guys. The Jedi turned up and attempted to save these two little girls from being manipulated by dark side witches. Witches in the law who are pro slavery and have taken an entire species of Zabrak Night Brothers and turned them into slaves. These are not good people. I am happy the Jedi went there and tried to save those kids. I only hope that they would have managed to save both of them, but they couldn't. There is nothing here to indicate why anyone should feel guilty over the actions that happened here, and there's nothing depicted here other than the witches being unreasonable and using their powers for the dark side that shows anything. I don't know why Master Tobin killed himself because he's done nothing wrong. The only thing I could equate it to was that these witches, when they manipulated his mind, broke something in him and he was unable to come to terms with it. Unless we have an episode later on that depicts it from May's point of view and we get some really messed up stuff happening, then the Jedi are not the bad guys here. I don't understand. Maybe we'll find out more in later episodes. I give this episode a 1.5 out of 5 because I can't go down to 1 because quite simply Saul is the only saving factor in this episode. If you enjoyed my review, please like, comment, and subscribe. Any constructive criticism is welcome, and I'll catch you guys somewhere down that road. Big Nate, out.